In a world where love is bound by bloodlines and names, some hearts still dare to beat out of rhythm. David Moretti, a man of power and poise, marries into the prestigious Vitale family. But behind every smile lies a quiet ache, and behind every vow, a secret longing. Living under the same roof is Elena, his wife's younger sister. An artist. A dreamer. A soul wounded by silence. What begins as stolen glances soon grows into something neither of them can control. A love that is forbidden. A love that demands a choice. Will David break the life he's built for the one love he was never meant to have? The scent of jasmine lingered in the summer air as golden sunlight filtered through the ancient stained glass of San Pietro's cathedral. Rows of polished mahogany pews were filled with elegantly dressed guests, their murmurs subdued under the weight of the ceremony to come. David Moretti stood at the altar, the weight of tradition pressing against the fitted shoulders of his tailored charcoal suit. His grey eyes scanned the aisle once more, then drifted upward toward the vaulted ceiling, as though searching for answers in the frescoes above. He was 31, successful, poised, and absolutely certain that this wasn't love. But it was a union. A powerful one. The Morettis and the Vitales, two influential names woven tightly together by expectation. When the cathedral doors opened, a hush fell over the room. Chiara Vitale, poised and radiant in a gown that shimmered like moonlight, stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on her father's arm. Lorenzo Vitale walked with his usual pride, his cold expression unshaken. David forced a smile as his bride approached, every step echoing with a strange finality. She was beautiful, no doubt, but something in her smile didn't reach her eyes. He suspected she felt the same about him. Elena stood among the bridesmaids, her copper-red hair catching flecks of sunlight, her sea-green eyes locked on David for a moment too long. She clutched her bouquet tightly, fingers whitening around the stem. He noticed her. Of course, he did. The ceremony began. I, David Moretti, take you, Chiara Vitale. His voice was steady, controlled. To be my lawfully wedded wife. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She should have looked away, but she didn't. Not when he stole a glance at her mid-vow. Not when he hesitated, ever so slightly, before sealing his fate with a kiss. Applause followed. The couple turned, arm in arm, faces masked with marital pride. But somewhere behind the veil of celebration, a forbidden connection had already been sparked, quiet, dangerous, and utterly undeniable. The vows had been spoken. And yet, something sacred had already begun to unravel. The reception spilled into the garden of the Vitale estate, a sprawling candlelit haven nestled on the outskirts of Florence. String lights draped over ancient olive trees swayed gently in the breeze, casting golden reflections in every wine glass raised. David moved through the crowd like a ghost wrapped in designer silk. He offered polite nods, brief smiles, and even danced the required first waltz with Chiara. But his mind wandered, not to the future, nor the marriage he'd just sealed, but to a single glance from earlier. Elena. He found her near the rose trellis, alone, sipping something red from a crystal flute. Her pale skin seemed almost ethereal under the soft garden lighting, and her dress, a muted emerald that brought out her eyes, flowed like a secret. He shouldn't approach her. But he did. Enjoying the evening? His voice was casual, betraying nothing. Elena looked up, startled at first, then composed. It's your wedding. You should be the one enjoying it. I suppose that depends on your definition of joy. A silence. Heavy, but not awkward. She tilted her head. You don't love her, do you? David's breath caught. Not at the question, but at the calm certainty behind it. He exhaled slowly. What makes you say that? You didn't look at her the way a man looks at the woman he loves, she said, voice soft but sharp. You looked trapped. He chuckled bitterly. That's dangerous insight, Elena. I'm known for it, she replied, among other things. Their eyes met, and lingered. Too long. The world around them faded. The laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses. None of it mattered in that moment of electric stillness. And then, as if summoned, Chiara appeared. There you are, she said, looping her arm through David's with proprietary ease. We have a photo to take. Elena stepped back, masking her emotions beneath a practiced smile. "Congratulations again," she said, her voice perfectly polite. But when she turned to walk away, David couldn't help but watch her go, not as a brother-in-law, but as a man slipping too close to a line he should never cross. The night deepened. Guests dwindled. The garden, once alive with celebration, had surrendered to silence. Only the cicadas sang now, their rhythm like a pulse beneath the surface of stillness. David loosened his tie and stepped onto the balcony of the guest wing. From here, the estate spread beneath him, the moon hanging low above the cypress trees, casting silver light across the cobblestones. He lit a cigarette. A rare indulgence. One he only allowed himself when the weight of things pressed too heavily on his chest. "You smoke now?" The voice startled him. Elena stood at the far end of the balcony, wrapped in a light shawl, barefoot. Her hair was down, untamed, like the version of her he wasn't supposed to see. "Only when I can't sleep," he said, exhaling slowly. She walked toward him, each step silent. "Must be often then." He smiled faintly. "More lately." They stood in silence for a moment, facing the darkness together. "I used to sneak out here as a child," she said, leaning against the railing. "Pretend the moon could take me somewhere else." "Where would you go?" he asked. "Anywhere but here." David looked at her. Really looked. "Do you hate this place that much?" She hesitated. "Not the place. Just what it does to people. Turns love into politics. Turns family into obligation." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. She already knew. "You're not what I expected," she said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. "Disappointed?" "No. Just surprised." Another silence. Then she turned to face him fully. "If things had been different." "Don't," he cut her gently, voice low. "Please." But her gaze didn't waver. "You feel it too, don't you?" David said nothing. The moon bathed them both in light. The air between them was thick, charged. Forbidden. He crushed the cigarette underfoot and took a step back. "We shouldn't be out here together." "No," she agreed. "We shouldn't." But neither of them moved. And in that moment, 1,000 unspoken things were exchanged. Not in words, not in touch, but in the dangerous quiet that only midnight can carry. The following days blurred into a rhythm of forced routines and polite silences. David buried himself in work, while Chiara busied herself with party planning, charity boards, and the optics of their new marriage. But Elena lingered. In the hallways. In his peripheral vision. In his thoughts. One afternoon, a storm rolled in from the hills. Thunder cracked the sky as rain poured violently against the windows of the estate. David had just returned from a site visit, soaked, tired, and aching for quiet. He stepped into the drawing room, and there she was. Elena. Alone. She sat by the fireplace, sketchbook in hand, legs curled beneath her. Her hair was damp, skin flushed with a kind of warmth only a storm could stir. "You're drenched," she said, standing as he entered. "I noticed," he muttered, trying to keep his tone neutral. "Wait here." She disappeared into the hallway. Moments later she returned, towel in hand, expression unreadable. She walked straight to him and began gently drying his hair, the towel moving in soft circles. He froze. "Elena," he warned. "I'm not touching you," she whispered. "Just the rain." But the way her fingers grazed his neck, the way her breath lingered too close, the way his heart betrayed him with each beat. It was too intimate, too careful, too dangerous. She stepped back, finally. "You should change before you get sick." "Right," he said, though he hadn't moved. She met his eyes for a second too long. Again. This time, he looked away first. He turned, walked toward the stairs, but at the base of it, he stopped. Without looking back, he said, "You shouldn't be so kind to me." And Elena, still by the fire, replied softly, "I don't know how to be anything else, when it's you." Lightning flashed. And for the first time, David felt truly afraid, not of her but of himself. In the days that followed, David did everything right. He kept his distance. He left the room when Elena entered. He avoided the balcony at night. He slept beside his wife and acted like a man fulfilled. But the heart is a rebel. And silence is never truly quiet when it's filled with her name. One evening, he accepted an out-of-town business trip. 3 nights. Milan. A chance to breathe. To reset. But distance has a cruel way of sharpening desire. On the second night, as he stared at the ceiling of his hotel room, a soft ping lit up his phone. Elena. You left your book in the library. On architecture and emotion. Fitting. He stared at the message. Then typed back. David. You read it. A pause. Elena. Some pages. I liked the line you underlined. Beauty does not ask for permission. It just is. Another pause. David. I didn't underline that. Elena. Then I guess it underlined itself. There was a heartbeat of silence. Then she sent a photo. Not of herself, but of his book, open to the page. Her fingers visible on the edges, delicate, familiar. David stared at the image for too long. Then he called her. It rang once. Twice. She picked up. Neither of them spoke. The sound of her breath, soft and close. The rain pattered faintly in the background. Again. Finally, he spoke. I shouldn't have called. I shouldn't have answered, she replied. A beat. Do you miss me? She asked. He closed his eyes. Every second. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then what are we pretending for? The line went quiet. Then she said it, the one sentence he knew would ruin him. Come back. And with that, distance lost its meaning. He didn't even pack. David left Milan that night, rain slashing against the train windows like warnings he chose to ignore. Every stop brought him closer to the edge, and to her. It was past midnight when he arrived at the estate. The storm hadn't stopped. Wind howled through the vineyards, and the mansion stood in darkness, sleeping. Except for one room. Light spilled from the studio, a place Elena rarely shared. He found her there. Barefoot. In an old sweater. Hair undone. A canvas in front of her, half painted in smears of blue and grey. She didn't speak when he entered. She just looked at him, like she'd been waiting since forever. He stepped inside and closed the door. What are we doing, Elena? He asked, voice low. You came back. That doesn't make this right. No, she said, stepping closer. But it makes it real. Their eyes met. And stayed. Again. He reached out, not to touch her body, but her face. His thumb brushed a drop of paint near her temple. She didn't flinch. She leaned in. And then. He kissed her. Not urgently. Not hungrily. But like a man who had been drowning and finally found air. Her hands trembled against his chest. His arms pulled her closer like instinct. There were no lies between them in that moment. Only the truth they'd been denying. But even truth carries consequence. When they finally pulled apart, Elena whispered, What now? David looked at her, torn. Now, we regret. She stepped back, face pale. You're married to my sister. And you're everything I've tried to forget. The storm outside roared louder, as if echoing their collapse. I love you, she said. Barely audible. He froze. And then, as if the words themselves burned him, he turned and left, without another word, without looking back. Elena collapsed onto the floor, tears falling silently, mixing with the paint at her feet. And in the hallway, David paused, heart split in two, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. David barely slept. His body was in bed beside Chiara, but his soul was still in that studio, stained by a kiss he couldn't wash off. Chiara stirred beside him. You're cold, she murmured, still half asleep. He didn't answer. He couldn't. When morning came, the house moved like clockwork, tea being poured, shoes echoing on marble, and smiles as artificial as the art on the walls. Elena was nowhere to be seen. Until later that afternoon, when David wandered into the greenhouse, seeking solitude, and found her curled beneath the ivy arch, knees hugged to her chest. She didn't look up. Elena, he said quietly. Still nothing. He moved closer. Please, talk to me. I was stupid to say it, she whispered. I shouldn't have told you I love you. His heart ached. She finally looked up, and he saw it, her eyes red from crying, her lips trembling from holding everything back. I've always been second to Chiara, she said. Even in this. You're not. But I am. Her voice cracked. I was the sister left behind. The shadow. And now I've become the mistake you regret. He knelt beside her, gripping her hands. You are not a mistake. Then what am I, David? He had no answer. Only silence. And his weakness. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if it could undo the world around them. No kisses. No fire. Just tears against his chest. Her pain became his undoing. Because loving her was the one thing he was powerless against. Even if it meant breaking both of them. It was supposed to be just another dinner. A formality for the family. Fine wine, fine lies, and the illusion of control. Chiara had arranged everything. The long table was set like a painting, silverware glinting under the chandelier, smiles sharp enough to cut. David sat at the head, beside his wife. Elena sat across, eyes lowered, hands folded in her lap like a woman at confession. Chiara was radiant, proud. To the Moretti Vitale alliance, she toasted, glass lifted. Everyone drank. Everyone except David. He watched Elena. Elena watched her plate. Until Lorenzo, the patriarch, leaned forward. Elena, darling. You've been quiet. She's tired, Chiara cut in with a laugh. She spends too much time in that studio. Hiding from the world. Elena flinched. David's jaw clenched. Then, like a match striking stone, the evening caught fire. Elena, Chiara said suddenly, voice too sweet, how long do you plan on living here, by the way? Surely, it's time you found a life of your own. The table fell silent. Lorenzo cleared his throat. Marcella glanced at her daughter in warning. But Chiara was relentless. Unless, of course, she smiled thinly, you found some new reason to stay? Elena's eyes darted to David, for a second. A fatal one. Chiara saw it. She froze. And then, laughed. Oh, she whispered. Oh my God. David stood. Chiara. But she was already on her feet, her voice rising, sharp and venomous. How long, David? How long have you been looking at her like that? Elena go, David said quickly. No, Chiara snapped, turning on her sister. She stays. Let her say it. Let her admit it. I'm sorry, Elena said, shaking, eyes full of tears. That was all it took. Chiara slapped her. Hard. The room erupted, Lorenzo yelling, Marcella gasping, Elena stumbling back, and David, moving like instinct, grabbed Chiara's arm mid-swing. Don't touch her again, he said, eyes cold. In that moment, the marriage ended. The mask fell. And the truth, naked and cruel, spilled across the marble floor. Chiara stepped back, staring at them both like she was seeing ghosts. Get out, she whispered. Both of you. And no one said a word. Because everything that could be broken, had shattered. The air in the Vitale estate never felt heavier. Elena had left that same night, bags hastily packed, eyes swollen. David had tried to stop her, begged her to stay somewhere safe. She refused. I've brought shame to them, she said, and to you. You didn't bring anything, David replied. We were already broken. We just admitted it. Now, days later, Florence felt colder. The villa stood still, too quiet, too polished. Like a corpse made up for display. David sat in his study, alone. Papers lay scattered. His phone rang. Again. And again. Chiara. He didn't answer. Then came the knock. He expected Chiara, or maybe even Lorenzo. But when he opened the door, it was Marco. Elena's childhood friend. Eyes dark. Jaw clenched. Hands shaking with fury barely restrained. I warned her, Marco said, stepping inside uninvited. I told her not to fall for you. Told her you'd destroy her. David didn't flinch. She's not destroyed. She's free. Marco scoffed. Is that what you call this? Freedom? She's living in a guest room in some art teacher's apartment, crying herself to sleep. That's what your love did. I never meant to hurt her. But you did. And now you've made her the villain in her own family. David exhaled. She deserves better than this war. Then prove it, Marco said coldly. Leave her alone. David froze. Walk away, Marco continued. You're married, wealthy, tied to a name. She's just Elena. No, David said softly. She's not just anything. Marco stepped closer, inches from his face. Then act like it. With that, he turned and left. David stood there, breath shallow, heart racing. In the mirror across the hall he saw himself, not the man in the suit, not the architect or the husband, but the wreckage. He'd been caught. Not by others, but by the truth. And now, the choice was no longer between right and wrong, but between holding on, or setting her free. Spring returned to Florence with its cruel beauty. The city bloomed, as if nothing had happened. As if hearts hadn't been torn open beneath its painted skies. David stood at the edge of the Arno River, the wind tugging gently at his coat. In his pocket, divorce papers. Signed. Silent. Final. He hadn't seen Elena in 3 weeks. He'd given her space. Let her breathe. Let her grieve. But not a day passed without her ghost shadowing his steps. That morning, he received a letter. Handwritten. Folded neatly. No perfume. No drama. Just her. David. I still dream of that night. Not the kiss, but the silence before it. The part where we didn't know what we were doing, just that it felt real. But I'm tired of being someone's secret. Tired of hiding. And tired of waiting to be chosen. If you love me, truly, find me. If not, please don't reply. I'll be gone by dusk. Elena. He reread the note as church bells rang in the distance. Each chime a countdown. He turned. And walked. Fast. Then ran. Through the alleys. Past cafes. Past regrets. She was at the train station. Bag in hand. Scarf fluttering. Alone. Their eyes met through the crowd. He stopped. Breathless. Broken open. Elena. Don't, she said. Unless you've chosen. He stepped forward, no hesitation now. Took her face in his hands. I choose you. Tears welled in her eyes. And everything that comes with it? She asked. The shame, the whispers, the exile? He nodded. Let them talk. Let them stare. Let them burn us if they want. She smiled. Then kiss me before the train does. And he did. Not like the first kiss, stolen, trembling, but like a man reclaiming his heart. As the train doors opened, they stepped on together, 2 souls who had walked through fire, and still reached for each other. Some love stories aren't meant to be easy, just meant to be real. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. Because the next one might just be yours.